I'm in the office, so no worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we are started. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful evening. It's one of those chilly evenings, and we are so excited to be here. I want to take this special opportunity to welcome you to today's webinar. I hope you've had a beautiful day. Today we are going to have a very powerful, timely, and heartfelt conversation on a topic that, truth be told, has visited most of us more often than we really are willing to talk about it. This is the imposter syndrome. It's not just another buzzword like we may want to imagine. This is that inner voice that keeps whispering, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. It's that tag that makes you downplay your success, question your competence, and, causes you to shrink back. Even when everything else outside you says, you have earned this, it will always speak otherwise. My name is Dottie, and today I have the privilege of moderating this conversation. And I hope that together we are going to have an awesome time. Joining me are two who are part of the 7 co-authors of the book, The Overcoming the Imposter Syndrome, that we are also looking to launch very soon, to be specific, on the 12th of July. And we are looking forward to also having a great, great experience with that. Dr. Faith, you're very welcome. We have just started. We are so excited to have you together with Mercy. And so at this particular time, I'm going to allow our speakers of the day, this is Dr. Faith and Mercy, to just introduce themselves. Let us know who is Faith, who is Mercy. What do you do? What solutions do you offer? And if we are interested, how do we get to contact you? So Mercy, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Dirty, and really looking forward to the engagements today. So just a way of introduction, my name is Mulei. I'm a risk and compliance leader. I have practiced cutting across audit, risk, and compliance for the last 13 years. My experience has spanned audit firms, fintech, and also telecom companies. I am extremely passionate about fintech and how transformative it has been in the lives of Kenyans and Africa at large. Above that, I'm also very passionate about mentorship, and I'm currently the Vice President of Women in FinTech. And this is where I'm able to actually, pay forward back to the community and be able to elevate other ladies and maybe just collaborate to walk through this journey of life together. With all these challenges, including feelings as Dottie has described. Do I belong here? Did I make it the right way? And even for the ones starting off in terms of how do I navigate myself to get to that vision or place I want to see myself in the next 3 or 5 years or in the long term. Uh, uh, for my contacts, if you need to get in touch, my phone number is 0721 887686. And you can also reach me on massimule@gmail.com. Thank you. Back to you, Dirty.
Thank you, Mercy. Thank you for that detailed introduction. We hope to keep in touch even after today's conversation. Dr. Faith, allow us to get to know you. You're muted.
I've had a cough for a while, so my throat is a little scratchy. But I am Dr. Faith Ngunjiri. I am a professor and leadership coach, professor in leadership and a leadership coach. I mostly like coaching women because I love women. I'm a woman's woman. But yes, I love coaching women on I'll say life and leadership, because most times when I'm coaching for leadership, life comes up, right? So it's hard to separate the two. But I have a degree in leadership studies, so I'm really just, I am a leadership person. I have also a degree in organization development. And before that, I was a teacher. I'm mwalimu. I started life as a elementary school teacher after graduating from KU many decades ago. And just kind of kept growing and growing until now. I'm no longer a full-time professor. I pivoted in 2022 and became more of the leadership coach, trainer, keynote speaker, that kind of stuff. I am a diaspora returnee, and loving living in Kenya and raising my kids in Kenya. And as far as solutions, coaching, training, keynote speaking. So Mercy, feel free to invite me to your your organization to come and give talks about all manner of things around leadership. I am certified in emotional intelligence, Gino's emotional intelligence practitioner. I'm certified in leadership circle profile. And just as of this week, I'm now imposter syndrome informed coach.
Yes.
Hot off the press.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Faith. Looks like you're going to have some really good time here listening to your backgrounds. I'm so anticipating to get to really hear. How have you dealt with this thing? At what point did you get to know that this thing exists? Some of us get to really realize that there's something like that at a very, advanced age, and you wish you knew it earlier. So thank you so much, the two of you, for being part of our conversation today. This webinar is brought to us by Zion Pearl Publishers under the She Leads project, which is also the project under which the book that we will also be talking about as we discuss the subject matter, Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. It's a beautiful book. It's already out. For those who are already joining us, thank you for joining us. The book is out and is available for you should you need a copy. So today we are going to talk about overcoming imposter syndrome. And as we look at it and also looking at the book, I want to begin by saying that this is not just a textbook. Actually, we are drumming support for the launch of this book as part of our conversation today. This book is not just theoretical. The two ladies we have with us here today are part of the seven co-authors of this book. And we are very privileged to have them just share a little bit about the book, even as we look forward to having it in our shelves and things like that. So this book is full of real life stories, great insights, and of course, practical ways to break free from the cycle of self-doubt. So it's a good book that every leader and every woman leader, to be specific, should have in their library. And what makes it even more powerful is because each of the stories in here are very unique. The women are from different backgrounds with different experiences, and that is a good resource that we can be able to glean a lot from. So I'm going to invite them to share with us what they know about this subject, imposter syndrome. They will be also a little bit talking about what they have written in the book. And at this point, Dr. Faith, I know in your chapter, you have talked about something that is incredibly insightful, and that is that overcoming imposter syndrome isn't just about motivation or willpower. It's about self-awareness, support, and strategy. And I believe I got that right. And that combination is powerful. That combination is powerful. And as you proceed in your writing, you also take us deep into the imposter categories, how they show up, how they mask themselves, and you explain that in details. We would really want to learn something from that. And I'll let you just take us through it and help us understand.
Okay. I thought you said we shouldn't share from the chapter anyway. I am very
Touch
happy.
and then touch.
I am very happy to do that. Do you want to give me access to sharing my screen?
Okay. Zion Pal, please permit sharing of screen. The screen is being managed from a different end. So let me request for permission.
Okay, I think they have enabled it.
Okay.
I want to do this because, as I said, I'm a teacher. And so for me, it's helpful to have I don't have to use the PowerPoint, but it's helpful to have it so that folks also have something to go away with, right? As far as things they can remember. Yes, I did talk about that there's strategy to this. It doesn't just disappear on its own without a little kick and shove. So let me just narrate. I'm trying to get my, there we go. Let me narrate this for just a minute. You can see my screen.
Yes.
Good. Yes. So let me, share a few insights. Mostly, I'll go outside the chapter because, as you heard, I am I'm now a certified expert in imposter syndrome. But the truth is, I actually did not know about imposter syndrome until about 2 years ago. Which is weird because I tend to get to know a lot of topics around women and leadership, but I really didn't know. I knew about the confidence gap, right? That is talked about a lot, about how women, we tend to, when an opportunity arises, you look at the opportunity, and if you're not 100% sure, right, like you've got all the skills they're asking for and then some, you're not going to take it. A man will look at it and see, I've got 50, maybe 60%. He will take the opportunity, right? So there's that gap that arises for women and men when it comes to confidence. So I'd been studying that, and that actually is what ended up leading me to discovering about this whole imposter phenomenon business. And so I wrote the chapter because when I started now to see this language about imposter, um, I realized that I was actually in the midst of my own imposter phenomenon. And I'm a very confident person, like super confident, and have been like that for many, many decades. It's not something new. However, I went through a very traumatic experience at work where I was basically being penalized for doing the thing I had been hired to do. And this was in an environment where I was the only, when I started, I was the only Black faculty on staff in a predominantly white American institution, teaching undergraduates who, for most of them, I was the first, Black professionals they had engaged with in their educational journey. And so they tended to be resistant, to having a Black professor. And then when I was going up for promotion, my faculty colleagues were like, oh, students have a problem with you. They say that, they're not comfortable in your class. You need to do something different. And yes, we know the reason they say that is because you're Black and female and immigrant, but you need to change something. So I'm asking, what am I supposed to change? The Black, the immigrant, the female? Right? How do I change any of that? And they really did use that to deny me a promotion that I really deserved. And it was such a traumatic experience because they said all these wonderful things about me and how my standards are above the college standards, that I not only meet but exceed expectations, except for this one thing that they decided to use to penalize me. And so the more I processed that, the more frustrated I felt. Like, I cannot change being Black or being female or even having an accent. I sound like a Kenyan. So anyway, I pushed and went all the way up to the president, the vice chancellor of the institution, to tell him exactly what I thought about everything that happened. But before I had the chance to do that, I suffered a heart attack. And so I realized I needed to confront so that I can at least be at peace with the whole thing, right? I mean, I can't change the outcome, but at least I can be at peace before I lose my life on account of stress and frustration and, discrimination and all that. Anyway, all that to say, that's where my imposter feelings began to show up. And they actually showed up not while I was there, right? But when I pivoted and decided I was going to become a coach and I was going to become a leadership development practitioner, even though I've really been doing that all these years, but to make my side hustle into my full-time hustle. And I realized I was procrastinating. I realized I would start a project and it would take forever to finish, not because I didn't know what I was doing, but because I was second guessing myself, right? And all this, there was a narrative going on in my head. There's a story I was telling myself. And so the more I interrogated that, the more I realized, this is not like me. This is not my normal. I'm not the kind that I had written so many books and articles and what have you and presented and have awards, right, to show that I really was as good as I thought I was. But because of this experience, and it injured me at a point of my identity, because I strongly identify with being a teacher, right? And so for someone to say you're not a good enough teacher because your white students are complaining about you, it really did injure me. Even though you'd think logically, right? I should have been able to dismiss that whole thing and say, well, that's your problem. I know I'm good. But it really did injure me. And so I came to this topic realizing that there's something has happened to me, right? I'm not acting the same way that I was acting before. And I'm not publicly, but those private questioning, why can't I just get this thing done? My coach would keep telling me, just do it. And I'd come up with 70 excuses as to why I cannot do it yet, right? I need a website. I need a this. Now I need branding and I need, right? And eventually I realized these were all just excuses. I'd been doing this for 2 decades. I should be able to just do it. So that's what brought me to this topic. And so the chapter is fairly personal in that sense, that I was experiencing these imposter feelings. And for me, because I'm a teacher and a researcher, when I feel something, I not only go to see a therapist or a coach, but I also start to, read up on this experience. So writing helped me with, narrating my story helps me with healing my own, sense of discomfort. And it gives me that space for reflection. But I also know that when I write, and I've been, writing a long time, when I write, people resonate, right? People resonate with the stories. People are able to identify themselves in bits and pieces of my story. So should I stop there or keep going? Because I could keep going for a few more minutes.
Okay, you still have several minutes to just have a talk around it. But listening to you, and a question is coming to my mind. Earlier on today, we were having a discussion with a colleague, and I was like, I believe that some of the imposter syndromes we are experiencing are inflicted. And listening to you, it is confirming what I had thought. If you didn't feel it initially, and then out of the experiences you went through, and now you began to feel it, then it was induced.
It is induced.
It is induced.
Imposter syndrome is not natural.
Mm-hmm.
Imposter syndrome, it's not natural. And that's why I started by talking about the question of confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back to that topic of confidence, what the research says is that for women especially, what begins to happen, like now, if you talk to my kids are 8 and 10. If you talk to my kids, they're still going to be telling you what they want to be when they grow up. And it could be 5 different things, right? And in their minds, they're convinced they can be those 5 different things. I want to be a horse rider, but I also want to be a vet. But then I'm thinking about being a pilot, but then I want to be a princess, right? They'll come up with all those things and they have no doubt in their minds that they can be all those things. Then we go to school. right? And somebody starts telling us, oh, girls are not good in math. Hmm? Oh, you should just go the art route because girls are not good in science, right? You raise your hand in class and the teacher ignores you because surely you don't know the answer. Let me just give the opportunity to the boys. The socialization we receive when we're in school, and then that gets to be even more as you go on. Like for us who are in Kenya, right? We go to college. I think when I was in KU, there were the ratio of men to women would have been like 10 to 1, right? There was definitely a lot more women than there was men in college. I go to grad school. My first graduate experience was in a theological school. And again, there was more men than women, and the men used to tell us how much we don't fit in, right? How much we don't belong there, right? For those of us who aren't married, they're like, go get a husband first. Nobody's going to listen to you if you're not married. So the stories we hear, right? And sometimes those stories are also happening at home. You might be being raised in an environment where you're being told, no, girls don't do that. Girls don't climb trees. Girls don't whatever, right? That's the work of girls. This is the work of boys. So we begin to internalize these stories. So by the time we get into our careers, right, some of that is still over there in the background. So when things start to happen in your career that, you're succeeding, but you're still questioning because you were told, girls are not good in science. And yet, now you're a medic, right? Or you're an engineer. So you're not born with it. You're not born with imposter syndrome. It's a social phenomenon, right? It comes because of the socialization, because of the stories we hear growing up, going through school, and then we start to believe them. And like, in my story, I didn't realize I was believing the things these people were saying about me because I was resisting actively, right? Until later I was like, why am I having a hard time coming up with a course on this thing and I'm an expert on this? Why am I having a hard time, right? It's like something happened, And so and that's part of what I like to do with my clients is to interrogate the source, right? Because once you begin to understand the source, it becomes a lot easier to negate those stories, and to remember that you're not an imposter. You're just feeling like one.
Wow. This is interesting. I'm even surprised that you are being punished for doing what you're hired to do.
Yep.
It happens a lot. And just knowing that we are not born with this thing, we pick it along the way, out of the experiences, the things people say to us. Hopefully, by the time we come to the end of our conversation today, we shall have learned how we can go about that and how to rise above it. To you, Mercy, I've read your chapter and I'm loving your story. I'm loving your story. Particularly you talking about when you missed out on some very important opportunity in your career, not because you didn't have what it takes, but because you didn't believe you did. You had everything. I'm even seeing you, helping people, navigate through the opportunity and prepare for it and stuff like that. But I love how the story is ending because you didn't just end it there. Eventually, you rose above it, and now you're a different person. Could you take us through that?
Thank you, Dirty, and I'm really glad Dr. Faith went ahead of me.
I'm not sure if it's me who is not hearing you well. Your volume.
Volume. Okay. Let me just adjust. Is this any better?
Slightly better. Could be better.
Okay. So I was saying, I'm glad
Yes.
Dr. Faith went ahead of me, and this is because I'm also learning. I'm glad she's a doctor, and I like the angle she takes in terms of you really have to understand and interrogate what the cause is. But I think maybe just stepping back and going through my journey. For me, I realized I had imposter syndrome about 6 years ago, which I no longer have. I think it's been a journey. And I'm grateful that now I'm actually on the side of being a subject matter expert on it. And if I could start, I think for me the realization came in when I knew I was excelling. And even everyone around me would confirm that I was actually excelling. And I mean, my performance rating at work would speak for it. And even the vote of confidence in terms of, as I was mentioning in my chapter, I was being told, you've been promoted, yes, but you can go ahead for the next position that is being offered. But guess what Mercy did? I could not get this courage. I opened that application. I read it over and over again, but I could not submit it. What are the thoughts that were coming through my mind? Mercy, you've just been promoted recently. You possibly think you're ungrateful. What will people think about you? Is this not enough? What will people say? I cared a lot about what perception people would have about this. And then I think I still felt like perhaps maybe I'm too young, or am I overachieving? And again, also that fear now comes in, and you start asking yourself, will I even be able to pull it off? Because you see, the moment you start doubting yourself, when you start being harsh, asking yourself questions on whether you can actually do it, you're starting to create self-doubt. And immediately you go into a vicious cycle where now you even start getting an anxiety, and you're thinking, no, I'm not able to do this. I think I'm just shooting too much up. So for me, that was how my journey started. But unfortunately, I didn't even know it was imposter syndrome. I just knew I had this feeling of, I'm capable of doing this, but I'm not stretching out, raising my hand to actually do it. And I couldn't place it. And I mean, seeing people stepping into the role that I wanted and thought perhaps I could actually do it, but I didn't get myself to even raise my hand for it, and supporting them through the onboarding journey, training them and just bringing them to speed, even coaching them for the training, for the interview they were going to go for. I think it was quite disturbing, and I kept asking myself, what is this? Now, fast forward, and then I do attend a conference, and there was this lady. She was actually a CEO, and she was taking us through her life journey and telling, and that's the first time I heard that word. I had never heard it in my life. And then she talked about how she had imposter syndrome, and she was not being courageous enough to actually step up into roles. And I'm like, oh, so this thing is just not me. There are other people who actually struggle from this. And I think from that moment, I started researching a bit about it. I think some of the things that I could associate with were, when you've come from a high value families that actually place high value on achievement, it's something that could actually be a trigger for you. When you are a perfectionist, yes, you're excelling, but you want to do things, and I think actually Faith did touch on it. You're capable, you can do it, but because of your perfectionist and your over analyzing of the situation, you focus more on perfection instead of progress. And I think now it's become a journey. I'm focusing more on push things out. Progress over perfection has become more of my mantra. And then of course there's that deep fear of failure, which also comes as a blocker to stopping you from actually reaching out and do this and doing and raising your hand to step up into these roles and take up these opportunities. I think largely as you're starting your journey, you have to have that self-awareness, as Dr. Faith mentioned. Self-awareness is really key. If you do not understand or conceptualize that you're actually struggling from imposter syndrome, there's no way you're actually getting out of it. It's interesting that people say that it's just women who struggle with it. Of course it is. We are the ones who are mostly affected, but I've also seen men in the office struggling with it. And this is more because of, I've been through the journey and I can see as somebody struggling, this is what the challenge is. I think interestingly, a few months back, we had a very interesting situation in the office where about two ladies that we knew they're very well capable of doing this job, but they actually didn't even apply for it. And I think it just took me back to where I started off. And I think we've been able to have such amazing conversations about it. And I think being able to come together and just speak about it and raise awareness on this topic is quite important. And I think for me, when I saw the topic, it really resonated with me when Dr. Doso and Mr. Doso actually reached out. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I was clear this is actually what I really want to speak about, because I feel that it is very important. It's a very important topic. It's something that people need to actually raise awareness on, and collaborate to see how to help more people actually come out of it, especially ladies.
Wonderful. That is deep. Thank you, Mercy. Having read your story, and also just from maybe my personal experiences and from the people around me, I realized that so many people are stuck. That feeling, the hesitation rooted in doubt, it keeps so many brilliant people, so many able people, just on the sidelines. People are stagnated, not moving, because, you have what it takes, but you're afraid of what if, what if they realize after all, I don't have what it takes? I think it is that fear. But listening to how you grew out of it, what do you think are some of the practical steps that probably were helpful for you, even to rise to the position that you currently are? The ability to overcome, like you have said. And with that, I also have a question. Is it possible to fully overcome imposter syndrome? And that I think both you and Dr. Faith will attend to. Is it possible to fully overcome imposter syndrome?
Okay, so maybe I'll start off with the practical journeys that I took, what I was able to actually implement. Then I'll go to whether it's possible to overcome. So first, I think the most important thing is actually that self-awareness, being able to come to that realization that, yes, I'm struggling from imposter syndrome. Then from there, for me, I think it was more of the determination. I wanted it so badly. I wanted to be an achiever. I wanted to succeed in my career. And I made a decision that I really wanted to succeed, and I was going to seek help in terms of how do I navigate this. So I tapped into my network. I got a mentor. I got a coach. I had very candid conversations with my coach, some that even made me cry, even in later stages of my journey, because now it was about you need to raise your hand, despite, and I think I love a very good book from Sheryl Sandberg where she talks about sitting at the table and raising your hand, no matter whether you know the answer or not, raise your hand first. And then you'll figure it out as you go. And that became my mantra. And of course, I mean, if you're in that space, obviously you will not perfect it from the word go. So it will be a journey that at times you'll get some disappointments because you're pushing yourself. You're going for things. Of course, you're taking some calculated risk in terms of what you're really capable to do and what you should step up to try out. But of course, it will come with some disappointment. So you need to be able to be careful so that as you take the first step, you also don't, what is it said? You can take 2 steps forward and then you go 3 steps backwards. So I think it's important to have that support system from coaches and from mentors who can actually still continue holding you and keeping you accountable. Because you'll find some people will try out once or twice and then they shy off and they go back into the box and back into the vicious cycle of I'm not capable. I tried, it didn't work. I'm done with it. So you have to keep consistently surrounding yourself with a support system that actually enables you to keep pushing forward, and also that accountability for you to keep going. And then over and above that, of course, you need to work on yourself in terms of your confidence, in terms of consistently reminding yourself that you're capable and reminding yourself that it's not about perfection. It's about progress. Just keep making progress and eventually the stars will align for you. Yeah. So, and I think it's also important for us to normalize fear. I'm sure even Dr. Faith will say that when this opportunity comes, there's that fear of, do I want, am I even able to author a book? So yeah, feel the fear and let's normalize fear. Feel the fear, but still do it anyway. I think that's really important. We'll always feel fear at some point in our lives with these assignments we've been given, but I think we need to rise above that fear and actually go forward and do it. Then most importantly, I think being able to speak up. There's so much power in speaking up. The moment you go into your cocoon and you're not able to say that, I think I have this problem, you might not be able to get that help that you actually need. But being able to voice it, speaking up and saying that I have this challenge really does help. And it's quite interesting that when you actually voice these things out, you'll come to realize that you're actually helping even other people who are not able to actually speak up for themselves. And then to realize that it's many of us who are struggling, not just me or Dr. Faith or you two, as you're saying early in the office, you're having a conversation. So I think those conversations should actually be encouraged. They help you to remember that you actually do belong. It's not a struggle that you're facing alone. It's a struggle that everyone has. And you just need to keep working on it and reminding yourself that, yes, it's possible. And it's a journey at the end of it all. I think that's what I would sum it up with. And I think that comes to the question on whether it's actually possible to fully eliminate. I would say it's a journey. And you need to be able to know when you're getting into that box of imposter syndrome and what self-talk do you do with yourself so that you can actually get yourself out of the box very fast. So I think what happens is you start reducing the, would I say the time frame you're actually in that box of imposter syndrome. I think that is what is most important. Being able to quickly know I'm getting into the box of imposter syndrome. Self-talk, I need to get out of it. It's not as bad as I think. There's always another opportunity. If this one didn't work, let me not resign to my fate. Let me just come out of the box and see how do I do it again. Back to you, Dottie.
Wow, profound. I'm learning because actually, while Dr. Faith says she got to know about imposter syndrome 2 years ago, mine is very recent. In fact, I got to interact with the word, that very word, very recently. And just being self-aware, just knowing that something like this exists has been helpful for me. I'm not yet there. I'm still really struggling with it a lot, you know. But at least now, because I know there is something like this and it is something I need to overcome, then I know how to position myself when those kind of feelings come. So Dr. Faith, to you, is it possible to fully eliminate, like Mercy has put it? And what would be some, effective strategies that someone probably would employ to just arise above the imposter syndrome? And going through your story, just touching the surface though, I like the study case. This Kahoro, I like Kahoro's turning point. I like Kahoro's story. Please share with us something about that.
Okay, I was unmuting. I put the slides back up just so I can refer to some of them. I'm not going through the whole thing. But yes, I wrote a story called Kahoro Story because that's a composite figure, right? Can we completely eliminate imposter syndrome? I don't think so. I do, however, agree with Mercy. You can reduce the amount of time you spend in that space. Here's why I'm convinced that, we learn to live with it, but we learn how to overcome, right? Like to get past it. I've seen so many interesting, powerful women talking about having struggled with imposter syndrome, right? You're familiar with Ariana Huffington, the founder of Huffington Post, right? And she's this really accomplished woman who immigrated from Europe, and ended up in the States and has done big things for herself. But see what she's saying here. The greatest obstacle for me has been the voice in my head. What Mercy was talking about, the negative self-talk, right? And she calls it the obnoxious roommate. I actually like that language a lot. That annoying roommate who keeps telling me I can't. I wish someone would invent a tape recorder that we could attach. You can tell how old she is. That we could attach to our brains to record everything we tell ourselves. Gen Zs have no idea what a tape recorder is. We would realize how important it is to stop this negative self-talk. It means pushing back against our obnoxious roommate with a dose of wisdom. So I'm like, oh, you mean even people like that? And there's so many others who have talked about having experienced it. When I was talking about earlier about confidence, there's a book by Claire Shipman and Katie Kay, and they interviewed all these women who are CEOs, they're, women who are at the top of their careers, who all talked about struggling with confidence, right? And I'm not conflating imposter syndrome and confidence to say it's exactly the same thing, but they're related, right? And, all these women kept talking about how they would walk into the room and just feel like they don't belong. And that's why they dug deeper to understand where does this, what happens. But these are accomplished women. And so we can accomplish a whole lot in spite of, right? In spite of imposter syndrome. So if your goal becomes to eliminate it, then you might get frustrated, right? When you find that you're not eliminating it. If your goal becomes understanding it, unpacking it, right, and resolving it, being able to understand, why do I get those feelings, those imposter feelings? Why am I feeling like a fraud? I'm not a fraud. Why am I feeling like one? Understanding the root, right, would mean that then you're able to reduce the amount of space you spend in the box. I was just writing notes on my paper here, that when you understand the history, like, when did it start, right? Because again, like I said, we weren't born with this thing. What is causing it? You see, sometimes the environment is the problem, right? And for me, that was the source, right? That's what injured me, was the people I was working with and what they were doing, right? Or sometimes where you are right now is the problem, right? That it is the one that's triggering those imposter feelings. And if it's the environment and you cannot change it, are you going to change yourself, or are you going to move on to a better environment, right? And that's where we talk about, sometimes you just need to know when it's time to move on to an environment that will appreciate your gifts and help you nurture yourself. Scan your history, understand, are these stories from growing up, right? Are these stories from your education? Sometimes that means you need a therapist, which is wonderful. Get a therapist if you have to, get a coach if you need one. Don't try to do this alone, right? Because again, it is hard to undo the negative self-talk, because sometimes we don't even recognize that we have that obnoxious roommate. Sometimes it takes someone pointing it out, like, hey, what story are you telling yourself right now? When you're refusing to apply for that position, and I know you're qualified, I know your CV is 37 pages long, what story are you telling yourself? So getting the support you need is helpful in unpacking it. But look at these statistics, right? You are not alone. When you're experiencing it, you are not alone. It's not a permanent position. It's not a permanent state, right? But when you're experiencing it, you're not alone. Up to 82% of people have imposter feelings at some point in their career, right? And the 82% figure was based on, looking at all the studies that had been published that had something to do with imposter syndrome, imposter feelings, imposter phenomenon. And depending on which study you read, it might say 20%, 30%, but up to 82%. That is a lot of people, right? And this is not women only, this is men and women, right? 75% of executive women say they have experienced imposter syndrome. By executive, we mean those in the, right, in the higher echelons of the organizational hierarchies. 80% of CEOs feel out of their depth in their role. They're performing, they're doing the job, but they feel like they barely have their heads above water. 84% of entrepreneurs and small business owners report experiencing imposter syndrome. Basically, what all these numbers are saying is there's more people who experience it than those who don't, right? A majority of people will experience this thing at some point in their lives, either because they're new at their job, they're still trying to figure it out, or like me, you've pivoted from what you've done for 20 years, you're trying to do something different and you're just questioning yourself, right? There are things that could be going on that are triggering the feelings. You are not alone, right? You're one amongst many. But I think these questions can be helpful. These are based on, there's an instrument that one can use to assess, right? I cannot tell you that you have imposter syndrome. It is something you recognize for yourself. And so these are some of the questions that you could ask yourself to see, is it just, run of the mill self-doubt, or is this really imposter syndrome, right? Because again, we could be conflating self-doubt with imposter syndrome. Self-doubt can happen to anybody and everybody, right? Imposter syndrome is more pervasive, right? It has a deeper impact because you will react to that imposter feelings different ways from how you would react just because you were doubting yourself for 5 minutes yesterday, right? So do you agonize over smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? And you read the chapter, so you would be familiar with the perfectionist, right? Do you attribute your success to luck or outside factors, right? You're successful, but you start to dismiss your success. Oh, it's just that. It's like when you tell a woman she looks good and then she goes, oh, this whole thing, right? So you just take the compliment. Are you sensitive to even constructive feedback, right? Do you feel like you will inevitably be found out as a phony? Do you downplay your expertise, even in areas where you're genuinely more skilled than others? And there's a bunch of other questions. And essentially, this eventually helps you to figure out which of those competency distortions you might be experiencing. Is it the perfectionist? Is it the soloist? Is it the superhuman, superwoman, superman, right? Which of those 5 that Dr. Young came up with might you be, identifying for yourself? And again, like Mercy has said, self-awareness is the beginning. It's the beginning of wisdom, to misquote the Bible. It's the beginning of wisdom. Once you know, you can't unknow, right? Once you know, then you start to become more proactive to deal with it. Now, for me, perfectionism is one of my problems, right? That for me is one of the big ones. And so I'd find myself doing things over and over and over and waiting for it to be just so, except just so never quite arrives, right? And being on my own now rather than employed means the deadlines are mine, so I can just keep pushing them, right? When I was employed, the deadlines would serve to make sure you get the thing out. So for me, recognizing that has helped me, just like with Mercy, what Mercy shared, right? Good enough, right? Let me get it good enough to go out the door. I can always improve it later, but let it go and have a life of its own. And this is true of like, I'm creating courses online. And I found myself like just working on something for so long. Then I reminded myself when I was teaching full time, right? There was no working on a course endlessly because you have to go and teach it, right? So can I just put it out there, right? And after I've taught it one go around, if there are improvements to be made, then there will be legitimate improvements to be made because I have gone through it once. So I deal with that. And the other one that I deal with, which kind of makes sense, is the expert, right? So when I said I am now a certified imposter syndrome informed coach, because for me, everything Everything I come across, I want to become an expert in it. So I read everything in sight. I do all the courses. I do all the programs. And eventually, my coach just used to keep just start, right? You don't need another qualification to do this. Just go ahead and start. And if you go down the road and discover, oh, you need more qualifications, then you can add. But start first. Just start, right? So people who see themselves as an expert are constantly trying to learn and be the most educated on a particular subject. I am so guilty of that. They can never know enough. And to them, their value is based solely on what they know. And yes, it makes sense being a prof. And the environment of academia puts that in you a lot, right? If you knew me in high school, you would know I was a joke. And so for me to have become this person who desperately wants to always be, the know-it-all from being called mediocre in high school, you just know there is a story there. It's the environment, it's the career that I chose to pursue. And so now I have to navigate this with care, right? To always be able to tell myself, start. You can keep reading and learning, but start, right? Get it moving. Just do it. Hope that's helpful.
That's really, really helpful. I want us to touch on something. I know it is said that everyone experiences imposter syndrome. And from my understanding from the little we have discussed today, I think everyone actually does experience imposter syndrome. The difference is that probably someone is not aware that whatever they're experiencing is actually imposter syndrome. Because when I look at the categories that Dr. Valerie Young talks about, I'm seeing men in some categories. I'm seeing some common tendencies with men, like perfectionist. Both women and men experience that. Then we have the natural genius, and we have the expert. A lot of men deal with that. So as much as we believe that women experience it more, from the little knowledge I've already gathered around it, I think this thing is equal. This thing is equal. Men, women, it only the only difference is whether you're aware you have it or not. And I'm looking at the perfectionist and looking at the natural genius. And I'm still holding on you, Dr. Faith. Aren't these two things the same?
No.
Why?
They're not the same because the natural genius expects to know. Don't have to work very hard to know, just expects to know, right? So you think that you should just be good at this, right? You shouldn't have to overexert yourself to learn the thing. You should just be good at it. And that's why, it may be a tendency that men might sometimes have, even more than women, because women, we have too much humility. But men have too much arrogance, right? So there's that, and I'm being funny here, but you understand what I mean, that for women, we're more likely to go the way of underestimating ourselves, while for the men, they're more likely to go the way of overestimating themselves.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Now, you both have shared from very deep places. What would you say to someone who is listening to us or will get to listen to us, but is still feeling like they can't come out in the open? They can't, take a bold step and do something, as much as they know there is something they have powerful to offer. They know I can do this. I have what it takes. But then that voice speaks so strongly to them that they don't get the confidence to step out and walk into what they're able to do. What would you say to such a person?
I think one, I'll say it's a voice lying to them to make them feel like playing small makes them noble. Or it's wise for them because they're not confident or thinking whether they'll be able to achieve it. But I think the first thing I'd like to urge them is in terms of the first step, determination. You need to be determined that I need to get out of this. And once you're determined that you need to get out of this, you don't need to go into the space of, I mean, there are resources available. If you don't feel that you want to maybe perhaps speak up or you want to get a coach immediately, first read up, familiarize yourself with what this imposter syndrome is. And I think I find it quite interesting. Actually, all these things you guys are talking about, natural genius experts, I'm hearing them for the first time. I think for me, I learned it the other way around, but I think it's quite amazing in terms of what are the opportunities available even online in terms of what you can actually read about the topic. Because I think once you familiarize yourself and you're able to, and perhaps take this copy of book that you've actually written, you'll be able to actually come in contact with real life stories of people who've actually been able to go through this journey. And you'll be able to start, because for me, I think that was the awakening call. You mean this CEO has actually gone through imposter syndrome? I thought this was just me. I know I'm made for more. I know I need to do more, but I don't know how to step and get into that zone. So I tended to play small and say, maybe it's not the time. I don't know, growth takes time. You know, you keep doing yourself that negative self-talk that will help you to run away from that imposter syndrome or believe that you have an issue, and you'll start, you know, talking to yourself and making yourself think that this is normal. No, it's not normal, and you need to actually reach out, read about it, familiarize yourself with it, and from there I think you'll now be able to start getting would I say real direction in terms of what approach do I take to be able to navigate what I'm actually going through. So I do encourage everyone to actually take a copy of our book. You'll be able to get real insights. We have a doctor who's actually been able to analyze the situation, give us the various dynamics in how it plays out. So I think it will be quite useful for you to get a copy and start off from there.
Thank you, Mercy. Actually, Mercy, your story came for me as a very strong encouragement. And I want to believe that somebody is going to get to read this, is going to be really impacted, you know, because some of the experiences you're sharing there, I have literally gone through. There are times when I've let opportunities pass by, not because I didn't have what it needed, but because I was unsure. Do I really have it? And then, you know, the fear of what if I give in and then I don't make it? They will realize after all she didn't have what it really takes. Actually, that is what imposter syndrome is about. Now, back to you, Dr. Faith. Your story is a little bit different. Comparing the two of you, Mercy struggled with a little bit of, you know, confidence in, I know this, I can do this, I got what it takes. While on your side, you grew up confident, you know. What would you say to someone who is having the level of confidence that you have walked in? Is it wise to begin to maybe do an awareness test, or what can we call it, just to realize even if in your confidence still there's some limitations in your life because of maybe an hidden imposter syndrome that you're not aware of? Would you say it is wise for someone to do a test even if they don't feel it?
So I don't like to pathologize people's experiences. And what I mean by that is, like, that's why I said earlier, you know, I wouldn't be diagnosing anybody with imposter syndrome. If they don't feel it, if they don't feel like it's having an impact on their life, then you don't have to. And if you do the test, it'll just prove to you that you don't have it, which is wonderful, right? Because, you know, that's why I said confidence and imposter syndrome are not synonymous, right? You can still be a pretty confident person in some areas and then be struggling in the professional identity area, because that's where imposter syndrome shows up. It's in our professional identity. So you could still be doing some things. And again, you know, this is not happening to people who quote unquote are failures, right? This is happening to people who are highly successful, high achievers, right? And so it's when you notice that there's a pattern of behavior that suggests you're cutting yourself short, right? You're limiting yourself. That suggest something isn't what it should be. And I think that's why Mercy's story is so powerful, is that she was doubting herself, even though there's someone saying, apply for this thing, right? Which means someone else thinks you are capable, but you yourself are doubting, right? Because it's not the same as you don't know what you're doing, therefore you're just, right? You just don't know. You're competent, you're capable, but you're limiting yourself. You're denying yourself the opportunities that are coming your way because, too much second guessing, too much. Then in that case, that's where you start to say, yeah, maybe I need a little help here. Maybe I need to do a self-test. Maybe I need to talk to a coach, right? Maybe I need to talk to a therapist. Because again, sometimes it happens later in their careers. Like, I didn't have that issue early in my career. I was blazing trails and, not leaving any casualties. But it's later on with all the things and then realizing there were some other stories that had been said to me that I had pushed down, left behind. But now when it piles up, which is what happens, that's what happened for me. It's like this thing is happening now, or it's happened recently, but there was some other stories I had, we, how it is. We didn't used to go for therapy back in the day. You pray it out and you keep going. But now, when it's happening over and over, it has, it happens again. It may be 10 years later, but it happens. It's sitting on top of the ones that happened before, right? And that's where, for me, I'll say, observe your behavior, observe your thinking, have the capacity to look over yourself and say, what I'm doing right now, the way I'm refusing to take those opportunities, would that be true of me? Would that have been true of me 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Or has this always been true of me? Because again, maybe you really do have issues with self-doubt and it's pervasive. It's always been the case. But in most cases, when we talk about the imposter phenomenon, we're talking about people who have, they've made it through certain things and then they're finding themselves struggling later on. That's why it begins to show up in college. And remember, for you to be in college, it means you passed high school, right? You made it through all that. But then suddenly you walk into the room and you're the only girl in a class of engineering students and you start to doubt yourself, right? Or you're the only whatever in a class of whatever, things happen that trigger it. So you can do the self-assessments, not necessarily because you want to find it, right? But because you just, it doesn't hurt to assure yourself that you're okay. But if you have that feeling that's telling you, that opportunity last year, I really should have taken that. I really should have taken it. Then it's time to get some help. And the help doesn't even have to be professionals. It can be your group of friends, If you have a group of friends that's intimate enough that you can be able to narrate what's going on and they will help you unpack it, then that's good enough. That's good enough.
That's really helpful. So insightful. I think everyone should know that this thing called imposter syndrome exists. And as much as it affects people who have probably progressed in life, have had some successes here and now experiencing some challenges when they try to move forward, I think the earlier someone gets to know if they're dealing with this thing, the better, because then you begin to really work towards overcoming it before it gets too late. Now, the conversation today is brought to us by Zion Pearl Publishers, and we are also highlighting the upcoming launch of a book that talks specifically about the subject matter of the day. This book is co-authored by 7 thought leaders. They are not just talking from theoretical knowledge. These are people who have studied, they have experienced, and they have triumphed over the imposter syndrome. And like both of them have said, it's a journey. It's a journey, but you can narrow down the experiences. You cannot say you can fully overcome it, but you can narrow down. So if this conversation is something that is appealing to your heart, if you have seen yourself in some of the conversations, some of the things we have touched on here and there, you don't belong here. Are you sure you got what it takes? Yes, you can, but not to that level. If those kind of questions keep coming when you want to do something major, something valuable, then probably you're dealing with imposter syndrome. So this book is for you. I have read it, still reading it, and I can assure you I'm not the same. If you hear me talk about the soloist, the superhero, the natural genius, then you can get to know that I've really read the book. And if I refer to Mercy's story and the lessons I've learned from it, you will see yourself. In out of the 7 stories, you will find one that resonates with you so deeply that will help you understand where exactly you are with imposter syndrome and how you can go about it. So this book is being launched on the 12th of July, that is next month. And we would like to invite you to be part of that experience. And why? Because these 2 ladies will tell you why. I will let them tell you why you're supposed to be part of that launch experience. Remember, there are 2 of the 7. So if what you've had today is helpful, you can imagine what you will be after listening to the rest of them, the other 5. So Mercy and Dr. Faith, what is one thing you want to promise anyone who is intending to join you as you launch this book on the 12th of July? What is one promise you want to make to them? What will they experience? Is there something they're likely to take away with them on that day? Mercy.
Thank you, Bertie. I'll keep it short. Candid conversations and vulnerability, and to see how can we help ourselves to grow together. Thank
Candid
you.
conversations and vulnerability. Faith.
Let me learn from Mercy and keep it short. I am a talker. I never keep anything short. Anyway, imagine what it's like when you put a group of women together to share their experiences. Most of us did not know each other before, we started doing this project, which means you get to hear us raw, right? As we engage with one another, as we resonate with one another's stories. And there's always more than what we put in the chapter, right? There's always more than what we put in the chapter. So you get a rich experience, not just from reading the book, but also from interacting with us and our stories live. I think it'll be a very worthwhile experience.
It's definitely going to be an awesome experience, since this is it's a unique journey for everyone, but keenly looking into it, you realize there are some universal experiences that come with it. Yeah, we experience it differently, but there's some universal feelings or things around it. So I also would like to welcome you. I'm going to be an attendee by default on that day. This is a conversation I can't miss. I'm reading the book, but I feel like it's not enough. And just like they have said, this is just one book. Imagine if there were 12 books or 7 books from the 7 women. So you want to come and listen to more of what they would have put down, that the limitation of the pages of the book denied them an opportunity to. So 12th July it is. We'll be giving more details. And if for those who are joining us for this meeting, I can see we have some guests. We acknowledge your special presence. We feel honored to have you here. The book is available. There's going to be a link coming in the chat box. If you want to make an order, feel free to do so. If you're in touch with one of the 2 speakers we have today, they can also let you have a copy. They have some copies with them, I believe. And also, if you want to register to be part of the upcoming launch, we have a registration link that should be moving on the screen. Hopefully it comes before we come to the end of our conversation today. But we are inviting you and also just letting you know that the copy is available. This has been such an insightful conversation. I was very keen to learn. And once a mind is stretched by a new idea, one of the wise people said, it can never regain its original dimension. I agree with Dr. Faith. You cannot unlearn, you know, some of these important things that we get to learn even as we continue to grow in our careers and even generally in life. So we have the link there. You want a copy of the book, you can get it on our online stores. And another link is coming up. You want to join us for the launch, click on it. There's some guidance on how you can go about it. And then on that day, we come together, celebrate these women for this commendable job they have done. This webinar is brought to you by Zion Pearl Publishers under the leadership of one Mr. Radido Doso, who is the director and founder of Zion Pearl Publishers, and also the man behind the She Leads project, the umbrella project under which several anthologies have been published. Overcoming Imposter Syndrome is just one of them. So we have several other books, titles. If you'd like to maybe get a copy, feel free to reach out to us, and we will arrange how it can be delivered to you. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Our two astute thought leaders, these are the fighters that have overcome imposter syndrome. We are coming right after you. One of these fine days, I'll be somewhere speaking about overcoming imposter syndrome, because I have learned what it is and of course picked tips on how to overcome it. And I want to promise you, just give me a short time. Next time we get to indulge, you'll realize I'll be a different person. So thank you so much for sharing, not just what you have written, but sharing your heart out to us. I also want to give a very special thanks to our audience of the day and our later time audience. Thank you for taking time to just also get to listen to what this is all about. I also want to let you know that this is not possible single-handedly. I'm appearing on the screen because I'm on duty today, but behind the screen, there are several people. That is the Zion Pearl team. So thank you, my team, for making this possible. Your contribution is essential. Without it, we may not have been able to bring this conversation into happening. So that brings us to the end of our conversation. Looking forward to seeing you on the 12th of July. And also just make sure that you have a copy of Overcoming Imposter Syndrome in your library. It will make a difference in your life. Asanteni sana, and do have a lovely evening.